I'm Elizabeth Henson. Welcome to the Messy Success Podcast, where I'm helping creative dreamers and overachievers tackle business and life. After 6 years of being my own boss, I finally unraveled a tiny bit of what it takes to survive in this amazing world of being an overly creative entrepreneur. I'm your business bestie, here to help you with all those big ideas and to normalize some of the day-to-day struggles that we all share. My mission is simple. I want more women to make a living doing what they love and to feel good about themselves in the process. The best way to start? We can't do it alone. So welcome. I hope you'll hang out with me here where it's totally okay to be messy. Hello, and welcome to the Messy Success Podcast. You guys, today is our special 1-year anniversary episode. I'm so excited about this, and I'm going to be digging really deep into some behind the scenes goodness. But first of all, let's start with some of our anniversary celebrations. So I thought it would be fun to celebrate a year of having the podcast by sharing some of my favorite takeaways. People ask all the time, how do you like having a podcast? What does it do for you? Have you seen a difference in your business? All of those kind of questions. So I'm going to share my takeaways, but then I'm also going to share kind of the cons or the difficulties that I have seen. So first, the takeaways from a year of podcasting. So the first and most valuable one is that it has been a great way to connect with people much, much faster. I have people that have found the podcast or took a chance on me and listened to the podcast and then immediately reached out saying how much they loved it, that it made a difference, that they really felt, connected to that episode. And I'm seeing people, feel connected to me, for lack of a better way to put it, faster after one episode versus just like trying to connect with me on social media. So that has been really awesome. I wouldn't say it's happened in like these great, huge numbers or anything like that, but the people that do listen, I feel like have become part of my community in a more expedited process. So that is great. The second takeaway is having a team. So probably about halfway into the podcast, I decided that I was putting too many hours into it. And I wanted to find a way to streamline the amount of time that I was spending on the podcast, to kind of divide that in half. And I already had my VA, Leslie, who was doing the show notes for me. I think we set that up from the get-go. I think she's been with me since day one. So I wasn't actually having to go in and do the show notes, but editing the episodes was starting to feel like it was taking up, an hour for each episode. And you guys know I only work about 15 hours a week, so I was having a really hard time. So I hired someone to help me edit the episodes, and that has been amazing. I've mentioned that before. So having a podcast has really created an environment for me to have a team and expand my team where, I've always kind of shied away from it because I'm not the most organized person in the world. But, a podcast is pretty straightforward. Like, this system is pretty repeatable. It's pretty easy to outsource different components as long as I'm the one doing the recording. So it's almost like having the podcast was like really great training wheels for me to start putting together my team. And now my team is growing and we're doing way more than the podcast together and all of that. And my integrator / project manager, Jessica, doesn't even really have her hands in the podcast routine or system because it was already in place before she came on board. So little pat on my back for, the podcast allowing me to do that. I always look at things as like stepping stones, right? So my photography career was my stepping stone into becoming an entrepreneur. And then having the podcast was kind of a stepping stone into part of my team building process. So that has been really good. Also, having a podcast has been great for collaboration opportunities because something I'm noticing as I meet more entrepreneurs and collaborate with more entrepreneurs is that when you have something to offer them, they are so much more likely to say yes or to be willing to be part of a collaboration. So having a podcast or any platform for that matter is great, because if you ever need to reach out and ask someone for support, then you have that option to say, and I would love to feature you on the podcast because I love the work that you're doing. I love this relationship that we've built. It is just a tool that can take those collaborations even deeper and more meaningful. So I've really loved the podcast for that as well. Of course, I also bring people in to guest speak in my communities, and sometimes I tie them up into both so that they're on the podcast and guest speaking. And sometimes it's just one or the other, kind of depending on the circumstances. But those are my 3 big takeaways: that it's helped me connect with people faster, it's helped me grow my team, and then it's been really great for collaborations. You guys know I'm a huge fan of collaborations. Okay, so the difficulties. Number 1 is that I kind of feel like I'm showing up in all the places, right? Like it's been feeling a little bit difficult to show up on the podcast, to show up on Instagram, to show up on Facebook, to show up in all the different places, and to show up well in all the places. And you guys know I'm type B. I'm not super organized. That's why I have this podcast in the first place, so we can have our own little messy success support center, right? So that has been difficult, but I'm actually going to dig in this episode and we're going to go through all these cons one by one and what I'm doing to fix it. The second one is the Facebook group. So the Messy Squad. I have not been a fabulous leader. I have not showed up in there in the way that I would like to. I probably show up once a week, but I would really like to be nurturing that community and taking care of them even more. But because I have 2 paid communities, I'm just finding that it's been a little bit hard to show up in that one. So I'm going to talk about that as well and what's coming up for that. And then thirdly, I never did master the whole like working ahead of time thing, right? So when I launched the podcast, I'm like, ooh, I'm just going to batch work every Thursday and I'll record like 3 episodes on a Thursday. And then I'll be 3 weeks ahead of time. No, that is not how Elizabeth Henson operates at all. So I never mastered working ahead of time. I've always produced my podcast in real time, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I really do like to speak from real time, what's really going on in my life, like real behind the scenes, nitty gritty. And, eventually I just accepted like, this is what works for me, right? Like working in real time is what works for me. Recording on a Monday or Tuesday, having the episode live by Thursday is just my jam. So, how do I plan on doing that moving forward? We're going to talk about that as well. And then we're going to dig into all of those in just a minute. But continuing with our anniversary celebration, I wanted to do some community shout outs from people who sent in feedback about the podcast. So up first is one of my favorite humans, Jessica Ryan Chenard. She is a photographer here in Hampton Roads. She runs an amazing program called Her Hike Collective. If you like hiking, you need to check that out. She got one of our little surprise shout outs earlier on in the season. So Jessica says, I love the Messy Success podcast because it's another hour to listen to the genius that is Elizabeth Henson. It's a great asset for business and for being your own boss. I love Jessica. Jessica's actually in both of my communities. She's in the Hampton Roads Creative Network, which we are also about to have a year anniversary for next month. How awesome is that? And she's in the Shine a Light Society, and she just rocks out both communities. I love having her be a part of all the amazing things that we're doing. She's so valuable, and she's just one of my favorite people. So thank you, Jessica. Okay, a few more. My mentor, Amber McHugh, I love her. She says, Elizabeth balances real life with business. She does it with so much heart. I love this woman. Tamra from Fit and Faith, who is also in the Hampton Roads Creative Network. Elizabeth has always been her authentic self long before I think our generation came into their seasons of self-awareness. She's passionate and energetic and supportive of others and also remains confident in her own gifting. Thank you, Tamra. Another one of my amazing mentors, Raina, who I'm also going to talk about in a minute, from Raina & Co. I love Liz's perspective and her ability to connect dots that don't otherwise get connected. It encourages you to keep it real and honest. Can't wait to keep tuning in. You guys are so awesome. I could keep going and going, but I didn't necessarily want this one to be the Liz show, even though it is an anniversary celebration. I think it is more important that I share my takeaways with you guys and what is really going on behind the scenes, what to expect. So many things we're going to dive into today. But yes, so I also mentioned next month is our year anniversary for the Hampton Roads Creative Network. So be on the lookout if you are local for some fun stuff coming in August. So where to begin? I'm going to share a little bit of a breakthrough that I had this morning that was in Raina's group. Actually, I just mentioned Raina from Raina & Co. So I got home from taking the girls to school and I logged on to Facebook just to say hi in my communities and all the things. And she has a Fueled with Heart community. It's one of the few Facebook groups that I really interact in pretty often. And she just asked the simple question: if you could get the instruction, clarity, or courage to do one thing that could change your business in a week, what would it be? And what's funny, you guys, is I ask my community members this question all the time, probably at least once a week, once a month. I say, like, if I could wave the magic wand, what would you do in your business, right? Like, I ask people all the time. But why do I forget to stop and ask myself? Because the answer was so clear to me. What I would do. I have this dream to step into the visionary role of my business even more, right? I talked about growing a team even more and just show up once a week, intentionally it would be on a Monday, share my intention with the group for what the week is going to be about and create one piece of content, whether that is the podcast or maybe a Facebook or Instagram Live, or maybe we're even repurposing old content. But my whole vision, my dream is to just show up once and then to pass off that content, that big bucket of content, that week's worth, right? So a 30-minute to an hour presentation on a Monday, and then just pass that to my team and then have my team break it down into Instagram posts or newsletter content, perhaps even blog content if it's relevant that week, but that all I have to do is to show up on Monday with a clear intention and create some awesome content and then send it to them, and they will break it down into pieces for my social media and all the other places, right? Because I'm kind of exhausted of creating posts on Instagram and trying to find something clever to say when really I've got this library of amazing content, but it's I just don't, I work in real time. So it's to come up with all of that, hurts my brain. But if I could just do it once and then have them help me repeat, right? Because really, we all need to be saying the same things over and over, but it's hard for us to do that and operate from that. So I knew that that was my dream, and that's the one thing that if I could wave a magic wand in my own business that I would start doing. So I posted that in the group, and then I started reflecting, and I felt like James Wedmore was sitting on my shoulder, what's actually stopping you from doing this? Because for some reason, every time I think about it, it's one day, right? The one day game, the someday game. Someday this is how I'll do things. And then I asked myself the really hard questions, what's actually stopping you from trying this? You have an amazing team. You have two very talented writers that help you in two different ways. You have an amazing project manager. What is stopping you? And I couldn't answer the question. And I think it's just because, sometimes change is uncomfortable, right? I'm kind of in a little routine with my team, and they know what to expect, and I know what to give them and what they can handle. And sometimes change feels like it can be uncomfortable, but I could not actually come up with a reason to not just start doing it. So right away, before I went and recorded this podcast episode, I sent a video to my team, a little impromptu team meeting, and said, hey, I'm going to ease into it this week, but starting next week, this is what we're going to do. And I'm going to set an intention every Monday, and I'm going to deliver content to you guys every Monday. And then you're going to, break it down for me in this way, and we're going to give it a try. Why not? Like, what do we have to lose? What was I waiting for? Like, for real, what was I waiting for? I got that idea probably like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago. I know that's not that long really in the big scheme of things, but it had really been on my mind. Like, this is what I want to do, but I just felt like I couldn't take it on right now. So I said, what am I waiting for? And I just did it. So I'm really excited to kind of make that little bit of a transition and see how things change. So I want to ask you that if you could wave a magic wand and do one thing in your business, what would it be? But also the most important part of that question, the what are you waiting for? Like, what are you waiting for? Is it time? Is it money? Is it fear? Like, what is actually stopping you? And when you really stop and dissect the answer of that question, you might be like, I could actually do this. So I want to encourage you to do that. Okay. So speaking of all of that, I can't even tell you the breakthrough that was, because before I sat down and saw that post, let me tell you where my mind was. My mind was talking to some of my business buddies about closing down the Messy Squad, or at least archiving it for right now. The Messy Squad is our free Facebook group geared around the podcast that I mentioned that I had not really been fostering in the way or nurturing in the way that I would like to. So I was like, well, maybe I should archive it. Like, I really want to be showing up in less places. I want to be doing less and pouring in more to those places. So before I had that breakthrough, I was like, I'm gonna archive the Messy Squad. And I might still do that. I'm going to leave that open-ended. It's very possible that I'm still going to do that, at least for the time being. Kind of as I'm on this tail end getting ready for the baby. We essentially only have about 2 more months to get ready for the baby. And then, of course, on maternity leave, I don't know how much I'm going to be showing up on the podcast or in the Messy Squad, but to be continued. And then I was also even having these thoughts of like, maybe I need to take a break from the podcast. Like, imagine if I was only showing up on Instagram and Facebook and in my groups, and that was the only place I had to show up. And I know that that's not really what I want to do, right? Like, I love producing the podcast. I've told you all the amazing takeaways for why it's so great. But, I haven't been pouring into the promotional side of things. But then after I had this breakthrough, and I talked it out with my team, the podcast can be one of those Monday content pieces, right? Like, it might be an Instagram Live, it might be a podcast, maybe I'll flip-flop between the two, but I'm not quite ready to put it on the shelf just yet. So also to be continued, like I said, easing into maternity leave, I don't know what things are going to look like, but for now, I want to continue to lean into the podcast because I do love it so much, and then we'll see what happens with the Messy Squad. And I know you guys are probably like, great, that's not helpful at all, that you don't know what you're doing. But I just want to let you know that it's okay, right? But what really paralyzes us is our inability to make decisions, right? Like, so for me to be sitting on, should I archive or not archive the Messy Squad, on that question, for me to sit on that for weeks and weeks and weeks, like, that's not productive. So I have to make a decision one way or the other and just move forward with it and lean into it completely. Because the best entrepreneurs are just really good decision makers. Like, sometimes that's the majority of the battle, is just making the decision so that you can move on. So I'm going to put some pressure on myself to make that decision. Hopefully by the time this episode goes live, and then I will announce it in the Messy Squad. We'll see, but to be continued. All right. So what is next? Let's see. Don't forget to ask yourself, if you could get instruction, clarity, or courage to do one thing that would change your business in a week, what would it be? And then what are you waiting for, right? Okay, so my intention for this week was to create this anniversary episode of the podcast. Our doors are opening very soon for Shine Elite and Shine Light Society. And we have our mastermind test drive this week. So it's a very busy week. But I did also want to speak on the topic of social media because I'm brainstorming ideas for our August challenge inside the Shine the Light Society. And I'm thinking of challenging members to take a social media break, whatever that looks like for them. That might be 5 days off of Instagram completely. That might be 5 days off of Instagram posts and just focusing on stories. Like, it could look very different. But have you ever taken a social media break? I'd love to hear what that looked like for you, what the results were. I have actually never taken a social media break, ever, since I started my business. At least not one that was announced and intentional. I mean, sometimes we go out of town, sometimes we don't post for a couple of days, but I mean like an actual break where you're not spending the time scrolling. And the reason I've never taken one has nothing to do with like my mental health or comparison, but my curiosity lies in my productivity, right? Like if I was to take a social media break, how much more productive could I be? Like, what would I be doing instead of spending all that time on social media? But again, now that I have this new strategy that I'm going to be trying out with my team, I might find that frees up a lot of that social media space if I'm not just trying to come up with something great to say on Instagram, because gosh, that seems to be the struggle, right? Just coming up with stuff to say that's interesting. But I'm going to turn that around. Thank you to my team. And it's going to be really fun and really exciting to see the transition. So that was all I had today for a special anniversary episode. Of course, most importantly, I want to thank you guys for being the most positive and encouraging and uplifting listeners that I could ever ask for. I'm so grateful for your support, even when I am embracing the messy side of my business and sharing that with you guys. And I would love to hear like your big projects and what you learned from them. And, you know, did you stick with something for an entire year? Like just the fact that I stuck with the podcast for an entire year, I'm so proud of myself. Like that's pretty big. And, you know, for a while I was beating myself up about, you know, was it consistent enough? Did I show up? But then looking back and seeing that I created 40, I think this is episode 41. So 41 episodes in a year. There are 52 weeks in a year. So that's actually pretty darn good, right? Like, go me. So yay for a year of the Messy Success Podcast. I can't wait to see how it evolves and how my business continues to grow and continues to change and pivot into the online space. Just this last year, if you've been following along, you know, hearing me go from so much photography to less photography to more coaching to memberships. I launched the Shine the Light Society on the Messy Success Podcast. Like so many of these little milestones of my business within the last year have happened on the podcast. So thank you for being part of that journey. Thank you for allowing me to share it with you in this space, in this container. So thank you guys so much. I hope you have the best week, and I can't wait to hear from you. And we're definitely going to be in the Messy Squad this week, continuing these conversations. So thank you.